When you look at someone's face, when you look at their eyes, when you look at their posture, you can usually spot someone that looks bright. They look healthy, they're standing straight, right? They're facing you, they're holding eye contact. When people go into a dis-ease state, almost always I notice a collapse in posture and a twisting of the face as people can't breathe. And really, that was the thing that changed my life. During COVID era, I noticed that most people's face was twisting because this is what I've done for many years. I've studied symmetry of the face and breath. And when you see someone's face going into a contracted state, like, you know that their hydraulic system, their life flow is disrupted in a major way.
Welcome to this episode of Essence. In this episode, I have with me Dr. Tim Weeks. Tim is a doctor of chiropractic, functional medicine, and physician. For the last 2 years, he's been traveling the world with his partner Vivian in search of answers of how to open the breath and how to contribute to the health of all. His declared goal is it to help millions open and release from a compressed state. In this episode, we will be talking about the topic of health, about the huge impact that our breath has on our system. And Tim will also share the methodology that he created to release people and to bring them back into a state of flow. I have experienced this methodology myself, and I can say it's truly transformative and amazing. So I just wish you a lot of fun and especially a lot of inspiration from this episode. It's going to be great.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you for doing this podcast. It's a challenge to start anything like this, and so I commend you. It's wonderful.
Wow. Thank you so much. And where are you currently? You said you were somewhere close to the sea.
Yeah, I'm in Belize right now. I'm staying at a house right next to the ocean for the next month. And it's, a really interesting place. It's near Hopkins, Belize. There's not much here. And so it's almost a practice in reducing inputs, a little bit of boredom. It's a boredom experiment. I'm practicing being bored.
I love it. Great experiment.
Yes.
And let's take everyone who is listening to the moment where we met, because I also asked you, like, where was the last time that you felt connected to your essence? And you said you would love to start with how the journey started, where we met first. So maybe you want to take us to this moment and what you were excited about or where you felt connected to your essence in that context.
Yeah, well, I think a little background first is I am a physician. I was a chiropractor and a functional medicine doctor for many, many years. And then I got involved in the journey of frequencies, sound, music as a methodology for opening the body, opening the breath. And that connected me to someone named Thomas. And I've been following Thomas for many years, which brought me to Norway. And it's where I met you. And one of the things that Thomas and I had been doing is experimenting with, and with my partner, is opening the body in almost an alchemistic way, using sound and ceremony and touch and breath all together to see if we could create some massive transformational moments. And that's where we met in Norway in one of those ceremonies.
Wow. That I remembered so well. It was so powerful and so transformative. And what you offered, I never experienced anything like that before. And I would love for everyone who's listening to get like a little taste of what is it that Tim is doing? Like something in the transformational world. What does that look like? Because it's, for me, it's truly unique and very, very special.
Yeah, it's a good experiment for me to try to explain. But basically, all of us have a core frequency. And one of the things that I observed, especially in the last, 7 years, is our frequencies represented in the human face and in the posture. And, as we saw so much happening in the world, it was, and the breath, human breath. It was my observation that most people's posture was collapsing. Their breath was becoming more shallow, and literally you could see changes in the face. And so for the last years, I've been experimenting with ways of how do we open contraction. When someone goes into a contracted state, um, and through many experiments, one of those methods, and perhaps the most powerful, it sounds crazy, is that we pull people from six directions. If you look at like a snowflake or almost everything in our three-dimensional world, there's six sides. A box has six sides. And our human connective tissue, our face, our fascia, has six sides. And so when we found that when we would manipulate people from six directions all at the same time, it almost acts as like a full reset. And people often feel a massive like explosion of energy in their body. And there's usually some release. Sometimes it's laughter, sometimes it's tears. But I found that people who are really stuck, physically, emotionally, chemically, spiritually, sometimes this can just be a profound reset for them. And so also we added ceremony and music on top of that, and many people. And it's a very powerful way of opening your body, opening your breath, and really resetting your core frequency.
It sounds amazing, and I've experienced it, so I can share maybe now, like from my first-hand experience, what that felt like for me, because exactly what you described, this being pulled from multiple directions, for me, it felt like a jolt of energy was just rushing through my body, and I felt, it's actually very hard to describe, but a lot of energy and alignment, and that something opened, some space opened, and I felt extremely free afterwards. And funnily enough, just 1 month later, I really decided to step onto this journey where I'm now, and start everything that I'm doing right now with Essence. So it definitely kickstarted something, and it's beautiful to see that this one circle at least is coming to full circle from this experience to where we're currently. And I would love to know also, like, how did you like, what was your research question? How did you end up doing this? Because this is something so specific. And yeah, what was your journey that took you to this moment, basically?
So I guess the best description of what I do is functional neurology. I test people's nervous systems. I check how well their body can move. And one of my observations many years ago actually was that most people who are sick go into a compressed state. And I experimented with different ways of opening the compression. And it's funny. A lot of people feel like, I've even heard people say, like, I just wish people could pull me from both directions. And it was in one of those times that someone told me that I thought, I wonder if I could do that. And I experimented with making a strap that would go over the head, and I locked the person's pelvis, and I decompressed them. I call it rapid decompression of the spine. And the most amazing thing happened. Like, it would go exactly where people were stuck and in pain. And people usually feel, like, as you said, a major energy release. And I witnessed that many, many times people's pain would leave immediately, sometimes chronic, lifelong pain. And then actually in Thomas's sound healing, I don't want to call it a vision, but I had the idea come to me, in this like profound way, that what if I could pull people from all six directions, their arms, their legs, their head, their tailbone. So I've really spent the last years experimenting with that as a methodology of healing. And it was the only thing that I found that can often restore someone's functional nervous system. And it does so almost immediately. And so I joke around, but I'm not joking, that it's the most powerful healing technique on earth. because I believe it is. And there's many other things that are needed, but if that is needed, it's the only way I found of opening that contraction.
Amazing. It is powerful. I experienced it. And how would you describe healing? Because it's the most powerful healing practice. Like, what is healing for you? Because there's so many people using this word, but what is it for you?
Well, I'll take it to basically the flow of the body. There's a flow happening continuously. Our blood, our lymph, our nervous system, everything is in a state of flow. And even the word disease is lack of flow. It's dis-ease. Um, and I could point to many things that it does, but the very core of that flow is our breath, and the flow of our cerebral spinal fluid from our brain down to our tailbone and back up. And that's sort of the lubrication of everything. All of our connective tissue, our fascia, our dura, everything is participating in that flow. And so when someone is in a state of dis-ease, there's something that happens in the spine specifically, but also throughout the whole connective tissue and breath that goes into, I call it a state of lesion, where it's contracted and it won't let go. And from that point, you can test people's nervous systems. The flow stops. Their nervous system, their lymphatic system, the cerebral spinal fluid, everything goes into a weakened state. And so it's about finding and releasing the blockage in a very specific way.
And what happens? What are the symptoms that people experience when the nervous system is blocked from a certain point onwards?
Um, well, it presents in many ways. I read the other day that there's 50,000 different diagnoses now. And so people's bodies break down in just innumerable ways, and we have a name for all of it. But it's always the same process. Some people say there's only one disease, and that disease is a loss of energy. And we are nature, right? And so our breath, the light coming in our eyes, which is our nervous system, the minerals that are the electrical system, the water, which is the hydration, all of it's coming together into one hydraulic system. And so when that energy drops, people disconnect with it. So they can't breathe as well. The motion of the fluids through their body are restricted. The most obvious way I think that we see this is posture, right? When you look at someone's face, when you look at their eyes, when you look at their posture, you can usually spot someone that looks bright. They look healthy, they're standing straight, right? They're facing you, they're holding eye contact. When people go into a dis-ease state, almost always I notice a collapse in posture and a twisting of the face as people can't breathe. And really, that was the thing that changed my life. During COVID era, I noticed that most people's face was twisting, because this is what I've done for many years. I've studied symmetry of the face and the breath. And when you see someone's face going into a contracted state, like that their hydraulic system, their life flow is disrupted in a major way.
Wow. And how could you spot this in people's faces? Like I'm trying to imagine someone listening to this right now is like, okay, is my face twisted? How could I find out?
Well, the easiest way is what we associate with beauty. And I know this is a tough one in a world where we're not supposed to like judge people, but some people are beautiful, right? Beautiful people who have symmetry of the face and good posture are usually healthier. We are engineered to be attracted to healthy, fertile beings. And so when you see someone who inherently is attractive, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be any specific definition of attractive. Every culture throughout history had a different definition. Like the Hawaiians loved big people, right? Some people liked really skinny. Some people wanted very muscles. Some people wanted small muscles. The one thing that was universal across all cultures in all time was symmetry of the face, and symmetry of the posture, because it represented, one step deeper, it represents nature. Nature always presents itself in ratios like pi, or the golden ratio. And the more a person is aligned with those golden ratios, those mathematical numbers of nature, the more beautiful and attractive they tend to be.
That's fascinating. It really reminds me of I was also diving deep into shadow work quite some time ago. And within shadow work, what I learned was that the stories, the narratives, the beliefs, and also your fears can also manifest in your body. So when someone tries to protect themselves from blame or shame, that this kind of goes into a twisted, shoulders forward, head looking down. So this connection of how free do I feel? How free does the energy flow manifesting in the body and the posture? Is that also what you're referring to?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where it gets almost hard to explain, but really fascinating. Every posture creates different thoughts, right? Right before we started, you said, check your posture, take some breaths. I think that you knew that you wanted to connect with the higher part of me, right? You wanted me to breathe and relax so that you could have a real conversation. And the tricky thing is the physical body, the physical biochemistry, and the thoughts all match. So when someone is in a crouched posture, as you just said, right, it's very difficult not to have sad, depressing thoughts. And so if we can interrupt in any way their biochemistry, their posture, or their thoughts, they're all a way of interrupting disease. But if you can do all three at the same time, right? Like have people connect to an emotion, release the physical twist in their posture, and often put people through a detoxification of some kind. That's where I have seen the most magic happen. And so let me ask you a question, and I hope this isn't too personal. Right after, for you, that release, right?
Yeah.
There was an eruption of emotion.
Hmm.
Um, did you even know what that was? A lot of people don't, or was it just a visceral release?
I remember this moment so well, and I even remember the song that we were singing. So this was to take everyone else into this moment. We were having this ceremony for hours, I think 3.5 hours or something like that. And we're singing the same mantra over and over again. And sometimes this mantra pops up in my mind, and I get just tears in my eyes because it touches me so deeply as I connected now with all these releases and openings that happened. So for me, what happened first, I felt this jolt of energy running through my system. I remember that I was screaming like hell, but not out of pain. It was definitely like a release of energy through my voice. And yeah, this might be strange for people to hear this vocabulary, but for me, it felt like something had left me, like something that was stuck in my system, some kind of darker and heavier energy that left my system in that moment. That was very, yeah, for some people it might be difficult to hear that, but that was my experience. And I can't until today, I don't know what it was. I can't say it was this belief or that this emotion got freed, but just that something opened, like a channel aligning itself within my system. That was my experience.
And I find it funny. Most people say the exact same thing. In the last years when I've been doing this, people almost always say something left. Um, I don't know what it was. I don't have to know what it was. But I feel much lighter, and I feel more aligned. And so, like, I'm curious, like, I know this is maybe supposed to be an uplifting podcast, but like, what is it that someone like you, and I think so many of us, what is it that we're holding on to that's compressing
Mm.
us? Um, it's some form of compressed energy, and something in our environment or in our life is creating that compressed energy that I think is collapsing our posture. And um, so you asked me before we started, like, what is the thing I'm most passionate about? Like connecting to my essence. Like, I think For me, we all tend to point in what helped us and what we've seen help others. And so, yeah, it's releasing whatever that compressed energy is and watching the transformation. And then you're a perfect example. I just love it when I see people going into some form of service afterwards. Um, you connected with your essence on some level. I'm not saying it was just me, but maybe it was a catalyst. And now you're doing something of worth. And I think that's really beautiful.
Thank you. And I can totally imagine that for you, like seeing all this beauty show itself and people sharing afterwards, like their essence with the world more and more freely through also this contribution that you made, this impulse that you said, must be so beautiful to see like a garden flourishing of people thriving. And to what you mentioned before about this dark matter, dark energy, or something like that, holding on to us, um, collapsing basically our society, is quite related also to how I see the world and how that relates with living our essence. Because I believe that our essence is always there. We come to this planet with this essence. And then over time, it might happen that because of conditioning, society, education, beliefs just get attached to us, and this energy flow gets less and less or stops. And how I see is coming back to our essence is basically unblocking this and reconnecting with what is already there. So I'm totally on the same path, and I love to see when people connect with their passion, connect with themselves, and just share themselves openly with the world. There's nothing more fulfilling to me. So I really feel you on this path.
Yeah, I think it's coded somehow in us to want to reconnect and to want to witness it in others. And I couldn't have said it in any better words than you just said. I think that we're all fully complete human beings. Um, and there's something that is blocking our completion. It's not that we're not complete in any way. It's as soon as we get rid of that thing that's blocking our natural flow, yeah, then we're free. And that's a lifelong journey right there, is trying to identify and get rid of and surrender that which doesn't serve you.
Yeah, I was now wondering, like, if someone is listening right now to our conversation, and you would have the chance to implant one thought, like just one thought that could change their life forever, and yeah, like that's high expectations. But if there's one thought or one idea or one way of seeing themselves or the world, what what would it be that you would like to share?
I think I will quote one of my teachers, David Hawkins, who wrote Power versus Force. He's a kinesiologist and in a very brilliant way figured out many aspects of human consciousness, life energy. He basically says, follow what strengthens you, right? Everything in life has the ability to bring energy into our nervous system, open us up further, or to put us into a deeper state of compression. And he says the secret of life, which I tend to agree with, is simply doing more and more things that strengthen you and bring energy into your being. Um, yeah, I guess that would be the completion of it.
Beautiful. And I actually right now I was thinking of one of these moments that we also shared when you did the muscle testing. And this thought also has not left me and has it sunk in deeper and deeper and deeper. Because I was thinking to myself, well, muscle testing, for people that don't know it, you could put your arm to the side and then someone asks you to say yes or no, and maybe you answer yes, and the person tries to pull down your hand or arm, and probably you feel strength. And then you can try with the same strength or even stronger to lift up your arm further. But if you answer with no, your arm will go down if the other person pushes down. And this thought is just being with me all the time because that basically means that if I don't live in integrity and with authenticity my life, I'm actually weakening my body. And I find this very fascinating, this thought of if I'm basically saying no to myself all the time or not speaking my inner truth in alignment, that this will weaken my body. What do you think about that?
No, it's absolutely true. I mean, we live in a universe of laws, right? And if you violate those laws of nature, um, you disconnect from nature. And the more you disconnect from nature, the weaker and less connected you are. It's an absolute universal truth. And I guess in that way, like, so one of the things I was always fascinated by, to maybe add another layer to this, is how in almost every culture, the word for breath and the word for spirit is the same word, right? Um, and so, like, in the Bible, it says, if a man gain the whole world but loseth his soul or spirit, he has nothing. And the same word, you could say, if a man gains the whole world but loses his breath, he has nothing. Because in the end of the day, connection, your nervous system functioning, your breath functioning, which connects us to life, it is the only thing that matters. Um, and once you recognize that, it forces you to change your life, or go into a state of depression. I remember I was speaking with a psychologist at one point when I was really considering quitting my job, and I was in a relationship that wasn't working. And I said, well, I can stay here, but I think I would have to go on an antidepressant, right? And another word for antidepressant is just addiction. I would have to do something to cover up my connection with my essence, because yeah, it's too unbearable otherwise. Um, so yeah, I do believe at the end of the day, you know, facing what the blockage is, we can try so many techniques. We can try, drinking it away, traveling it away, screwing it away, all of it. But at the end of the day, we have to face what that blockage is, go through it, release it, so that we can reconnect with life. And that can be said in many ways, many cultures, but that's the core of the whole journey, I believe.
And what would you say in from your perspective, what is the cause for a depression, as you mentioned it?
Um, One of the problems I think we often do is we think that there's one cause, one solution. Like, with most diseases, whatever, there's a bacteria, and therefore you have pneumonia, and the solution is an antibiotic that kills that bacteria. But in the real world, it's never one thing. Everything's combinations, right? And people who go into a state of contraction where they can't breathe, where their flow is stopped, where they're sick, there's been a confluence of things that put them in a weakened state. I'll name some of the biggest ones: processed food, sugar, um, lack of movement, right? And then the most difficult one in the world today is overexposure to synthetic light, um, from our phones and computers and televisions and tablets, um, and not connecting with the natural light rhythm, which throws off every aspect of our brain and nervous system, from our pituitary to our hypothalamus, yeah, our whole entire endocrine system. And I just saw this morning that this might be controversial, but that the United States is just now taking all the fluoride out of the water. With the new president and Robert F. Kennedy, there's a lot of changes happening, and I thought, wow, that's amazing. That's one of them. However, like, how are we going to take on the biggest one, which is synthetic light? Um, and so, yeah, again, it comes back to disconnecting with nature. There's many things, but those are the biggest.
for me, it's so fascinating. This thought that there are so many diseases and so many ways that people suffer, like the symptoms. And it seems like when boiling it down, it often comes to losing the connection to nature, losing the connection to ourselves, and losing the connection to one another. Can it be so simple?
Yeah, absolutely. But the solution's not simple, right? We've built a society that is we're all part of, right? We're talking right now, and I have a light in my eyes, and I'm staring through a computer. And yes, technology is part of life, but finding a way of it's changing so fast. The human body just doesn't have the time um, to balance it. There's so many inputs coming that it's overwhelming our system. And so the trick of how to live in this world, right, without getting down and without becoming, completely, I don't know, overwhelmed. That's the trick, and I think that's what you're really asking. How do we live in this world, in our essence, without having to be a hermit?
Yeah, totally. And I'm asking myself the same question. I'm having the same challenges. Right now, for this podcast, I have this massive white artificial light um, sitting in front of or standing in front of a screen, not moving. So that's actually the opposite of a natural movement and flow of things. And I'm also on this mission trying to, for myself and for others, how can we live the most connected with ourselves, one another, and nature in a world that's more and more artificial and disconnected? And what are the different ways we can approach this?
I think having philosophies is important, belief systems, and the belief systems we choose are very, 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 very important, right? Um, if you choose, for example, what Carl Jung said, just the belief in God, right, immediately improves your well-being by like 20%. Um, and so I think having a few philosophies that are inherently strong and life-giving is important. And, recognizing that the human body is this magnificent temple and that we live in a universe of laws. And there's certain things that if we want to connect with life, that we have to be willing to do. And that might require a little bit of discipline. Um, but once you begin to do those things, so let's just say a few examples, right? Some of the things that I do that really help me. And I know you were talking to Vivian, she said the same thing, like waking up and looking at the sun as it's rising, that resets the entire light body, all the what's called the SCN cells, super chiasmatic nuclei, which are all the light receptors through your entire endocrine system, that resets it. Spending 20 or 30 minutes opening your body and your breath, that opens your entire lymphatic system. Not eating processed dead food, that allows the entire mineral systems of your body to function. Spending a little time each day actively being bored. Like I said, how I started this conversation, I'm practicing boredom, trying to like quiet the brain. Call that meditation or prayer or whatever you want. Like those four principles right there, I think if practiced, drastically align people with life.
Actually, inspired by you and Vivian, I adapted my morning routine a little bit. And every morning before that, I was also stretching myself maybe for 15, 20 minutes, and then had a meditation. Every now and then I also did a sound practice. But what I now included was inspired by the two of you, was after my stretching, getting up and going outside for half an hour, walking around with weights. And I do
Yes,
that
you're
at the time
doing
where the
that.
sun rises. I'm doing that. Yeah, yeah, I'm really doing that. And I
That has
feel
been,
such,
uh,
yeah,
say it. No, please.
yeah,
I got so
I
excited I
just feel
interrupted.
it's such a huge difference that I experience inside of myself. Just, I've noticed that at the end of last year, I wasn't doing it. And I felt like my face got like was already tired at midday and felt that my face was a little swollen, like just my inner experience of it. And now just waking up, going out when the sun is rising, walking just with these weights, not doing anything too special. Then I do a couple of squats with those weights as well in half an hour, and it changes my entire day. So I'm super grateful. That's definitely something that I could recommend to everyone listening as well.
Yeah, that one thing I often say, like, it doesn't have to be complicated. Like, if you get rid of the one thing that's probably weakening you the most, um, and that can be emotionally, or physically, or chemically, and you add in one thing that massively strengthens you, like your whole life's going to change. That it changes the equation. And one of the things that is necessary in the human body is to carry things. Like the human body was designed to walk carrying things. Like that's how we've been living for who knows how long. And simply walking, carrying a weight, it aligns your entire posture because you have to. You can't walk with a hunched posture. And so walking with a kettlebell or weights, yeah. And we talk about these things almost like they're one of the things I love is to combine the medical world and the hippie world, right? Like,
Yeah.
a lot of people say like, "Oh, I'm going to do some sun gazing." I love to explain to people like what that's doing in the body. Like it is,
What does it do to the body?
oof. Well,
I want to
like
know.
red light is absolutely necessary. You hear a lot of people talking about red light, but there's no red light on Earth that doesn't flicker except for the sun. And so when you look into the sun, it's the light goes through your optic nerve, through your sphenoid, all the way around the brain to the hypothalamus, and it literally it sends light through your entire nervous system, and every endocrine gland responds. There's scientific research that shows staring into the sun is um, the most powerful effect on your endocrine system that there is. And so it's literally a nutrient. Um, and we all you think of the words matter, right? Like I said, dis-ease, right? It's obvious that dis-ease is a lack of ease. The goal of anyone, whether they're a hippie or a spiritual, or even now, as we're realizing from a medical standpoint, is enlightenment, right? More light in the body. And the more light there is, the more alive you are. And so, yeah, looking into the sun for the first 5 or 10 minutes of the day is the most powerful way to enlighten your body that there is on Earth.
That is so fascinating. And I love also how you are bridging these worlds. Because I love several worlds. I love the super hippie world, the super spiritual world, the very scientific world. And what I like most is when dots get connected and when there's communication and dialogue and interchange and learning from one another. And I wanted to share something, a funny detail, as you said, light is so important. Yesterday, my mother showed me something. I didn't know that before. So I always thought that the first word that I said was in German, the word for, well, the English word is quite long, caterpillar, but in German
Mm.
it's very short, Bagger, like two syllables. But that wasn't my first word. My mother was actually writing every single day, like at least one line if something happened that she enjoyed about me being around. So when I was maybe 9 months old, and I would need to check again, like how old I was. Apparently, the first word I said was light. And this is so fascinating. I'm like, oh, wow, okay. Seems to be an important one for me as well.
It seems to be important. Like every creation story always begins with light or sound, but usually it's light. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it's a big one.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Wow.
just to say one more thing, like our nervous system is a fiber optic system. Um, there is light transmitting through your nervous system. And we see that even with the optic nerve, right? But it's actually going through our entire bodies. And yeah, and so like when I did that manipulation on you, right? And you felt some shock of energy, what we were doing is we were removing a blockage in your central light system so that more light could transmit through your body. And I think that's the core of it. Um, And that's why I think it's the most powerful, healing technology that I've encountered. Many other things are necessary, but um, anyone who I think is struggling, I think that for sure is part of it.
And I'm now curious, like if you speak to other people in the same area that you also work in, and also when you look at the journey where you came from, um, and you share this practice with others and your thoughts and ideas and perspective of it, what is the reaction that you usually get? Is it like a critical
From
world
from
from
patients
other
or
like
doctors,
from other doctors?
you know, um, it's weird. It's universally almost accepted. Now, a lot of people are scared, right? They see it happening and they think that sounds scary, and it is, right? Vivian and I have called this work sacred surrender because it sort of forces some blockage in your body to be exposed, and you have to allow that to happen, and it's incredibly scary. And some people look at it like they're scared, but I've never I never met anybody who experienced it who didn't recognize immediately. Even I did it on I did it on a surgeon, a spinal surgeon, not a heart surgeon. And actually, I take that back. I did it on a heart surgeon as well. And they immediately recognized what it was doing, right? From their perspective. Um, and so I guess my hope is to expand this healing methodology in the years to come. The last years have been almost like an experimentation phase, and now I want to start doing case studies on it. And I've been meeting with a professor, someone who posts in literature, because I want to document this not only from a subjective perspective, what people are going through, but also from a medical perspective. Um, and I know I'm going on and on now, but I've even thought, like, is this work more? Does it need to be more in the realm of medicine, or is it some other area that this should be in? Because a lot of people have lost trust in medicine, and medicine is so clearly capitalistic.
Good question. Like, what would your greatest dream be if you'd be like, wow, if I could create another path which is not alternative medicine and which is not school medicine? Or would it be like, I would love that people all around the world participate in so train the trainer, so to say, system and learn this methodology and share it with the world? Like, would your greatest longing be there?
Yeah, I think that's it. Um, I think we all want to be surrounded by people we love, and we all want healing. And so any system that brings people together and promotes healing, I think is wonderful. But to answer specifically, yes, I would like to um, eventually teach this, so that more people are doing it.
Are you ready at the point where you said, like, if people listening right now, like, hey, I've been a trained doctor for 20 years, now I want to learn this. Is it already now the moment, or what would need to happen still for you?
No, I think now is the moment, and I actually have trained several physicians already, um, to some degree. But yeah, I think that I'll say that if you are in the healing field, or even seeking it, I do think that rapid decompression of the body, of the dura, of the spinal cord, um, of the breath, which are all the same thing. I think, yeah, I think it should be added to almost any and all healing methodologies as a way of helping people release.
Amazing. I really hope that someone listening right now is like, okay, I'm going to write Tim tomorrow. I link also what you're doing. I'm also going to link it down in the podcast description so that people can find you. I find this so fascinating, and it feels like a pioneer going on a discovery and then stumbling across this magical method, um, which is so fresh and new to the world. Um, yeah, and I hope that that inspires others also to find their path, stumble across their magic methodology or potion to share whatever it is with the world. Have you found other people that are doing something similar actually in this world, or other methodologies from a similar quality?
Um, are you speaking from a standpoint of just people bringing out their essence, or specifically these type of techniques?
These type of techniques, yeah,
Well,
in this area.
I think everybody doing healing is actually trying to do the same thing. You know, I said earlier there's only one disease, and that disease is compression or contraction. Um, and whether you're using sound or yoga or breath work or diet, all of them, what they're trying to do is remove some layer of compression from the body. Um, and that compression is, if you study electromagnetic fields, that compression it could be defined as dissonance that's held in the tissue. And so they're trying to release dissonance. And dissonance, another word for dissonance is toxemia. Um, and so I think that anyone who's doing real health work is trying to do the same thing. Um, as far as specifically what I'm doing, um, I have not seen anyone do it anywhere in the world. And the other thing that we're doing, so your readers can hear it, is we're also releasing the skull from six directions. Um, and so one of the things we do is there's three passages. I always tell people, if you study the human skull and you study the breath and you study the sphenoid, like, you have to believe in God. It's like so magnificent, and I think that's what the ancient Egyptians were doing when they were looking at, like, the third eye but the human skull is the instrument of consciousness, right? And the more open your skull, the more open your breath, the more alive and the more conscious you are. And so, as I said earlier, people's faces are twisting, and it could be defined as a mass loss of consciousness. And so when we open the skull, we do it from six directions. We stick a balloon up the nostril. There's three passages on each side, and we're opening up the six directions of the skull. And then we do the same thing with the body. And there's some people doing pieces of it, but I, with help, have we put together our own methodology. And then one more layer, if I can, and this is the last thing I'll say about this, maybe, is with sound, right? With harmonic sound. When you open the body, because we are a musical instrument, right? When you physically open it, I do believe it needs to be retuned. And one of the things that you said was you remember the mantra that was happening while it happened. And I think that's super important, being reprogrammed with harmonic, loving sound. And I think those are all the steps, if that makes sense.
Wow, it makes total sense. And when you speak about it again, I get transported to this moment where we sing this Ramadasa mantra. And it's just like, I feel it in every cell of my body. Like this, you call it reprogramming with this harmonic sound. And I find it also so fascinating, just this short note on what music can also be. Like, that music is not just entertainment, but it can be way, way more, and also applied in these healing methodologies. So I find this very powerful. And I'm so grateful that you're exploring this also with Vivian together, and you've been on this journey for so many years, and then, starting and creating your own methodology. I really, really celebrate that.
Thank you very
And
much.
yeah, at this moment, I feel also that now we're coming slowly to like a natural moment of completion. And I wanted to ask you if there's anything that you would like to share with the people that are listening, either something that you would love these people to know about you, about the work that you do. Um, Maybe you have some inspiration that you want to share with the people, whatever that is. Now is a good moment to share that, or whatever else is on your heart where you feel like, yeah, I would love to say that in this episode.
Yeah. I feel like this is a really important time that we live in. Um, so many people are in a state of dysfunction, whether it's anger or sadness or, yeah, many, many, many layers of non-life-giving frequencies that it's a huge time for I think many people are being called, and it's also a rebirth of so many new things. And so I guess I would encourage anyone who is in that state of anger, sadness, depression, to listen and be called, because I think even from a biblical standpoint, we're in times of high dissonance and chaos, and that's when rebirth happens. From a specific thing, I'd love for people to stay in touch. So we're just starting a website. It'll be done the next month. But we call this work Sacred Surrender. Um, and the website is going to be sacred-surrender.org. And so if people want to get connected to us, be treated, or maybe learn the techniques, they can go there and they can sign up for our newsletter.
Amazing. Yeah, I would definitely recommend this work that you're doing to everyone. Please reach out to Tim, check out the website, and yeah, sign up for his newsletter. And I can just speak from my personal experience. This opened so much for me within myself, and it's definitely one impulse that contributed to that I'm doing what I'm doing right now in this very moment. So if you want to step on your path and living your essence, this can also be an amazing impulse. And for this moment, I just want to say such a big thank you, Tim. Thank you that you took this time, that you shared your experience, your path. And I'm just very grateful for you as a human being, about our connection, and that I get to be inspired by you. So thank you so much for being here. And for everyone else, I'm looking forward to seeing you in this next episode of Essence.